Top of the day, beautiful people. Top of the day. That's Wabu. That's Wabu. Shalom. Sawubona. Grand risings. Great day. Top of the day. All the daily greetings. Okay, beautiful people. Shema Israel. Yahuah. Eloheinu. Yahuah. Echad. All right, beautiful people. It is Wednesday. Uh-oh, we knocking on 800. All right, beautiful people. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. It is April the 14th, 2021. Day 127 of year 3 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets, another 3-year consecutive day count. Day 796. We are in 1 Kings 10, 11, and 12. Then we're going to hop over to the LOJ, Legends of the Jews. Pick up where we left off at yesterday on page 481. All right, so before we get started, beautiful people, I was not able to see the moon. And so the reports came in and I checked, and the new moon was actually spotted on Monday, right? Okay, so it took me a little while to get them up while I was searching and everything. So, but apparently it was spotted in quite a few places on Monday evening after the sun went down. So the Sabbath rotates to Mondays like I had originally thought, but I couldn't see because it was cloudy. So sometime when I can't see and it's cloudy over here and I'm still looking for days, I got to go back and check the worldwide reports, so, but apparently it was seen on Monday and it was super cloudy here Monday. So I wasn't able to see a thing. All right, y'all. So let's go ahead and get started with the Shema here. The Shema is found in Deuteronomy chapter 6. We'll start at verse 3. Remember, read the entire chapter. Keep it all in context. Hear, therefore, O Israel, and observe to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may increase mightily, as Yahuah, the God of our fathers, has promised us, in the land that flows with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, Yahuah, our God, He is one God. And you shall love Yahuah your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I command you this day shall be in your heart. And you shall teach them diligently unto your children. And you shall talk of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way, frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the posts of your house and on your gates. And Yahuah commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear Yahuah our God, for our good always, that He might preserve us alive as it is at this day. And it shall be our righteousness if we observe to do these commandments before Yahuah our God, as He has commanded us. All right, beautiful people. Put this out the way. Shalom, Tiffany. You saw it? Okay. Girl, I couldn't see it over here. When did you see it? Did you actually see it Monday? Were you able to see it Monday, Tiffany? Let's see, let me pull this up over here. Okay, sweet. You remember the time you saw it? I'm just curious. Peace and blessings, Aliyah, Belinda Brown, Mom, shalom, shalom. I try and keep the times too here in the local area. But a lot of times different reports come in from the East Coast, like in New York, not necessarily Virginia, but we know they kind of lump Virginia in with New York. So when I can get times as close over here, like 2 months ago, though, it was really clear. Matter of fact, a couple months ago when I did the video, I was super excited when I spotted her and was right across the street at the tennis court. The next day, I shared it on Facebook, but News Channel 13 is, you said it was way past your bedtime, you don't recall. But the News Channel 13 actually decided for that night that they were going to just let the cameras record the sky. And I came across it. And when I came across it, it just happened to be at the point where I saw the sliver of the new moon. I was like, oh, snap, wait, they caught it on camera? So I went to the video and I shared it because I actually was able to, the skies was really clear that night when we did it a couple months ago where they caught it. It actually, you could watch it progress through the sky from when the first little light sliver of it showed till it got a little, it seemed like it got a little closer, but you could see it actually fill out in light, right? Just as slithered, you actually got to watch it fill out. And I'm like, this is amazing. They caught this. I said, did they know they caught this? Did they do this on purpose? Like, is there somebody watching where they wanted to record this? Or did they just happen to have it in this area where they caught it by mistake, right? And it was beautiful. And the whole time span of the video, while progressed across the sky after the sun went down, was approximately 2 hours. From the time she showed the first light to where she filled out in a complete sliver till she just disappeared into nothingness. It was absolutely beautiful. I never seen it like that until they actually caught it. So every new moon now, I try to go to the channel and see if they decide to record the sky again. But I haven't seen them do it since 2 months ago. They do it, but not like at the perfect time where it shows the entire progression. I'm going to see, I don't know, they be having, maybe I can find a link off their channel where it's short and I'll try and put it here so you can actually see what I'm talking about. But sometime I was going to say I was going to try and download it so you can see it and kind of upload it. But sometime with the permissions and stuff, they don't let you do that. So I'm going to see if I can find a link where you can actually go watch it and you'll see what I'm talking about. So when we watch it from now on, you will know. Well, I don't know if you need to have binoculars or something, but you shouldn't need to. If it's clear skies, you can watch it. You just need to know the correct area you need to be watching at so you can watch the progression of the sliver fill out. It's pretty cool, like if you got the patience to do it. I just kind of enjoy things like that. Guten Tag, Uncle JB. I think I said that right. It's German. Okay, y'all. So let's go ahead and get started with the reading for today in 1 Kings chapter 10. And right here, I know we already read past this point in Legends of the Jews, but if you forgot, and it's in the same portion with King Solomon, just kind of go back and listen to it again or reread it, right? Okay. So we're going to go over this little blurb that they give us about the Queen of Sheba in 1 Kings. When the Queen of Sheba heard of Solomon's fame, which bore honor to the name of Yahuah, she came to test him with hard questions. She arrived in Jerusalem with a large group of attendants and a great caravan of camels loaded with spices, large quantities of gold and precious jewels. When she met with Solomon, she talked with him about everything she had on her mind. Solomon had answers for all her questions. Nothing was too hard for the king to explain to her. When the Queen of Sheba realized how very wise Solomon was, and when she saw the palace he had built, she was overwhelmed. Yes, you missed the Shema. Thank you for a reminder, though, but yeah, we did it already, Auntie. She was also amazed at the food on his tables, the organization of his officials, and their splendid clothing, the cupbearers, and the burnt offering Solomon made at the temple. She exclaimed to the king, "Everything I heard in my country about your achievements and wisdom is true. I didn't believe what was said until I arrived here and saw it with my own eyes. In fact, I had not heard the half of it. Your wisdom and prosperity are far beyond what I was told. How happy your people must be. What a privilege your officials to stand here day after day, listening to your wisdom. Praise Yahuah, your God, who delights in you and has placed you on the throne of Israel. Because of Yahuwah's eternal love for Israel, he has made you king so you can rule with justice and righteousness. Then she gave the king a gift of 9,000 pounds of gold, great quantities of spices and precious jewels. Never again were so many spices brought in as those the queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. In addition, Hiram's ships brought gold from Ophir, and they also brought rich cargoes of red sandalwood and precious jewels. The king used the sandalwood to make railings for the temple of Yahuwah and the royal palace, and to construct lyres and harps for the musicians. Never before or since has there been such a supply of sandalwood. King Solomon gave the queen of Sheba whatever she asked for, besides all the customary gifts he had so generously given. Then she and all her attendants returned to their own land. What this doesn't include is that King Solomon gave the queen of Sheba everything she asked for and also a child, right? King Menelik. Each year, Solomon received about 25 tons of gold, then did not include the additional revenue he received from merchants and traders, all the kings of Arabia, and the governors of the land. King Solomon made 200 shields of hammered gold, each weighing more than 15 pounds. He also made 300 smaller shields of hammered gold, each weighing nearly 4 pounds. The king placed these shields in the palace of the forest of Lebanon. And then the king made a huge throne decorated with ivory and overlaid with fine gold. The throne had 6 steps and a rounded back. There were armrests on both sides of the seat, and the figure of a lion stood on each side of the throne. There were also 12 other lions, one standing on each of the 6 steps. No other throne in all the world could be compared to it. And that's all they give us about the detail of his throne, but we know that it gives way more detail about that miraculous and glorious throne that he built that had all kind of mechanisms going into it, whereby anybody who dared to try to approach it, aside from King Solomon, was either killed or wounded very badly, including King Nebuchadnezzar. All of King Solomon's drinking cups were of solid gold, as were all the utensils in the palace of the forest of Lebanon. They were not made of silver, for silver was considered worthless in Solomon's day. The king had a fleet of trading ships of Tarshish that sailed with Hiram's fleet. Once every 3 years, the ships returned loaded with gold and silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. Also, let me bring out a point. In Isaiah and in Jeremiah, we'll also hear about the ships of Tarshish, right? Which is clearly people here on the earth, where when Yahuwah is telling us about how he is going to return the scattered nation of Israel, the nation of Israel that has been scattered to the 4 corners of the earth, how he is going to return us all to our land, right? We did the Shema, Trina. And so he said that, matter of fact, he mentioned a few different ways. Some people like to read it. Bella, you got to turn it down. We talked about this before we came downstairs. We talked about, in my video that I did a couple days ago in Mothership, I also listed, if you go in the comment section, you will see where I kind of listed those out. Some people tend to skip over those, but Yahuwah said he's going to return his people to their land by way of the nations who held them captive, right? I'm not sure if you guys seen that video of Mothership, but some people tend to pull things out of context, out of scripture, and it has you believe in a whole different thing. Now, if you remember how I tell you when you read through the scriptures, especially the Old Testament, you need to go through and first of all, read it. Don't try and read it going through trying to pull out deep interpretations. It's going to get you off, right? And that's what's happening to a lot of people that's trying to interpret different things back here. You have to go back and you have to read it first of all, to understand a story. Remember I said when you come back here and read it, wait a minute, Tootie, stop. You have to read it like you're reading a regular book, like you're getting a good book, or just read it for the story and the plot. Read it like that first. I mean, don't treat it like it's a common book, but in order to be able to understand, in order for the points to fuse in your mind, you have to be able to read it like that. Otherwise, if you go and research, okay, well, this point, this don't make sense. What I found out when you do that, it doesn't work. You may be able to fuse some things together, but if you don't really read it to like engross yourself in the story and become a part of it and understand the characters and who they are and the feelings and all that stuff, you will never get it. And thereby, and we can tell, those of us who have done that can tell those who have not done that, right? Because those are the ones that start telling you, oh, well, this is done away with and all this over here, and you have to do this, and none of this matters, and the Sabbath, you don't have to keep these. But what they fail to realize, when you go back and you do the things that Yahuah commanded us to do, which he said they would be perpetual laws, right? Keeping his Sabbath, keeping the feast days, their memorial feast. But he also talks about, and people try and use that, they're trying to use that logic where he said, where Yahuah said himself, well, right in here, I hate your feast days and your new moon celebrations. Do you know why he said that? He wasn't saying to stop doing his commanded feast. He was telling his own people, Israel, to stop doing those commanded feasts because they was doing it out of a religious mindset. They was doing it just for the sake of saying, I did it. They were doing it and they were still living like the sons and daughters of hell, right? They was doing what they want to do. We even see that all through the book of Ezekiel. Son of man, come here. Let me show you what your people doing. Even let me show you your people first. Look at what the women. See what the women doing? They in here worshiping and weeping over Tammuz. Who was Tammuz, right? This is the same God they're worshiping during the Christmas time, right? Yahuah addressed that, right? The Asherah poles that they set up and they decorate. He talked to Jeremiah about that. And matter of fact, he talked about the Asherah poles all the way through the Old Testament, right? He said the Asherah poles are Christmas trees, right? Jeremiah talks about how they take them in their house and they decorate them, right? Still doing it to this day. So the whole point of bringing all this out is, if you don't really understand the story, if you don't understand a family and what has happened in a family and what daddy has said to his children, you don't get it. And you pull it out of context, and we can tell that you are truly an outsider. Even though you may be family, you're an outsider and you don't know, and you really don't understand the family history, and you do not understand the family dynamics that's going on. So it would behoove a lot of people not to try and explain that, because when we hear people try and explain that, we know you have no clue what you're talking about. You can have no clue what you're talking about because you yourself do not keep them, right? When you keep them, it doesn't make you religious. When you keep it, when Yahuah said, those that love me keep my commands. You even see that in the New Testament. John tell you that, right? Those that love the Most Holy keep his commands. Bella, got to turn it down a little bit more. Because when you begin to keep his commands, you begin to see things from his perspective. He opens up another whole level of wisdom that those who don't keep his commands, that they will never come into, no matter how spiritual they may seem or how spiritual they may think that they seem. They cannot enter in onto that path because they are not obedient to that command. Thereby, they will never be able to understand it until they submit themselves to that type of wisdom, right? And that is something that I learned from personal experience. And Yahuah showed me, it was like I even seen it. When I did it, it was like I seen it. He said, those that don't keep these, they cannot even enter in here on this path. There is a hidden path that you cannot even, matter of fact, there is a hidden path that you will not be able to see if your eyes are not even in a direction to keeping what Yahuah has said. It's not like these things are going to cost you your life. Like, is it causing you anything extra to rest on a day, keeping his Sabbath on the appropriate day? Not saying that you may be looking for it and you trying to find, well, okay, what day is the right day? But your heart is to do what's right. Okay, Father, help me to do it right. Those people, they stand a better chance of that hidden path being shown to them than those that's just moving along in the masses and in a hurry. Okay, thank you, baby. I see it. So, and when I say I brought all that up because I wanted to bring out about the ships of Tarshish, right? Because Yahuah said people, his people, once he regathers them, they are going to return to their land here that's on the earth, right? Not out of here, up to heaven, here on the earth. And there are going to be many generations after we return to the land, because he goes on to talk about what's going to happen when he returns us to the land, right? And he calls out the ships of Tarshish, right? He said that we would return home. The nations who held you captive will return you to your land, right? And those who held you captive will become your captors, right? You can read it in Isaiah, you can read it in Jeremiah. And he said they're going to return them home by planes or the ships. The airships is not spaceships. We can tell that they're not spaceships because, Bella, you have to turn it down some more, because it talks about the birds. It says, I see, who are these flying through the air like a dove as she landing softly on the window. So I'm kind of summarizing it, but it's talking about a dove flying and returning to her nest, and land. Some versions say landing softly on a windowsill. None other than the sons and daughters of Zion. They are returning home. The nations are returning them home, right? And if you go down, you can find that in Isaiah chapter 14, Isaiah chapter 60, Isaiah chapter 66. You can read it in Jeremiah. I forget the chapters in Jeremiah, but today I will post all of that. I'll pin it in the comment section here, and I'll also put it in the description box. But he didn't say spaceships. Some like to take that out of context and just pull out the chariots. But if you go and you actually read that, where they pulled the chariot portion out, I'm like, how did you just pull out chariots? But right there in the same vicinity, it lists all the other ways that Yahuah says that he was going to bring his people back. It says by swift beasts, by caravan, by chariots, by mules, by horses. Like all of that is listed in there right beside chariots. What caused you to just pull chariots out and tell people that there were spaceships in the sky, when it clearly gives you other land transportation vehicles like mules and horses, caravans, all these things, right? And those are just the land ones, right? And he said, these bring my children from lands from afar, from lands where people trust in me. Like, you got to go read all of that. It blows my mind how people cherry pick scriptures to prove a point, to continue pushing garbage to people. And it burns me up. It burns my buttons to see people purposely leading Yahuwah's people astray. But what saddens me more is most of our people are taken with this, and they don't even go back and check this because they think their leaders possibly may not have any flaws in them. I have flaws. Everybody has flaws. But I tell y'all, check behind me, check behind everybody to make sure you are not being led astray, because it's very clear. And what they pull out of context right there in the same vicinity, like in the same verse, it lists all the other modes of transportation whereby that it's earth transportation that is going to return Yahuwah's people back to their land here on earth. And it said the marine ships, or the ships in the sea where captains drive, Navy, Coast Guard, those type of ships. It said leading those water ships will be the ships of Tarshish, right? And it labeled it the ships of Tarshish because it wanted to let you know these are people that are here living on the earth, right? So it has all of those things. When you don't read it in context, you don't read the story, you get all discombobulated when somebody comes with something radical. Yes, spaceships are coming to get us. Yes, I'm like, what? What do y'all believe this garbage? I'm telling you. And I say that, Bella, you have to turn it down just a little bit more. And I really want to stress that so much, y'all, because there is, and if you watch that video that I did, there is another group of people that is preparing for a spaceship invasion. Is that far-fetched in our days? No, right now it's not far-fetched, because the United States of America has created a space force, right? To go along with this alien invasion spaceship. Why would the United States be helping Yahuwah, right? In this, you have to see just the obvious logic in this, right? They've been preparing people for a spaceship rapture type invasion or sweeping, carrying away, and they're even they're even putting out stuff from the government saying that, yeah, this is going to happen, people. I'm like, yeah. When I started seeing the United States and other countries getting on board with this taken away in the sky, I was like, wait a minute, something is wrong. Something is completely wrong. Let's see what Yahuah truly says about this. And Yahuah takes great strides in telling us how the ships of Tarshish. I've looked into the ships of Tarshish. I want to say the ships of Tarshish. It's like, don't quote me on it, but I'm still looking into it. It's Spain and Portugal, right? From what I understand so far. I may not have that 100% correct, but everything that I find so far is pointing to Spain and Portugal, which kind of makes sense to me. Think about the Spanish Inquisition, which led up to the transatlantic slave trade. Like, you have to look at all of those things to pinpoint where all of Yahuah's people have been scattered and by what nations, right? King David's army, Spain and Portugal, came down into Africa, scattered about, pushed out, moved out to the world, right? So you have to look at the Spanish Inquisition, the Arab slave trade, also the transatlantic slave trade. All of those go together so you can see the big picture. In our day and time, you have to put the historical pieces together. Now, I know there was a big side note. I'm not going to say it's a rabbit trail, but I wanted to bring it out because when we talk about the ships of Tarshish, realize it's a people here on the earth, right? So, like I said, if you don't go and you just don't read the story and get to know the people, who they are, who is the God that they worship, and what's going on in a family, the feuds and the fights and the splits, you can be taken by somebody who just cherry picks. Even Israel, who is waking up and want to teach this principle, they cannot teach this if they're not intimate with the details of the story. If they haven't taken the time just to go and just, let me just read this like it's a good book and go through and read a couple times, the pieces don't sync together for you. Thereby you can say, oh, this is, like I saw a video and it really saddened me yesterday to watch this lady. She kind of credible. To watch her say this, I'm like, clearly you are, like, what she was saying, it was like, oh, Yahuah is going to send people to hell. And this is what he was talking about Easter back here. You're pagan. I'm like, clearly, sis, you ain't read none of this, have you? Because he wasn't even talking about the heathen pagan holidays and stuff. He was specifically talking to Israel about his feast days that they were keeping, that he said, I am sick and tired of this. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of your new moon feast. I'm sick of your Sabbath day feast, your new moon feast. I'm sick. You're just so cold. I'm sick of it. You make me want to throw up. Yahuah was talking about his own feast that he had given to his people to keep, because they were pretty much, although they were keeping it out of religious mindset and kind of like robotic movement. We're doing this is how we're supposed to do it. Perfect right here. Make sure you clean the meat appropriately, burn up the fat and pour out the blood. You do it like this. They was following all the details, and outwardly they looked like that they was doing it, and outwardly they were keeping it to the T. But in their daily lives, they was doing everything he told them not to do, worshiping other gods, multiplying women unto themselves. He said, what's the point in keeping these feasts? He said, I'm sick of it. You make me want to throw up because you're doing it and still living in the ways that you were told not to do. The purpose of keeping these memorial feasts is to remind us to live set apart lives, right? That we may be a light to the nations, that we will have power to stand in the midst of adversity if something comes up against us, and thereby we could call on you who are out of pure and holy set apart hearts and lives, and knowing he will answer us. But every time they cried out, although they were religiously keeping his feast, they had no power to stand. He said, I'm handing you over to your enemies. He said, because you was just running them up in my house, right? And that's the whole point of that, y'all. So y'all got to be very careful. Anybody that's saying that and they go on and they still damning you to hell because, oh, this done away with, you don't need to do this, you can know right off top that they have no intimate knowledge of Yahuah's laws, his statutes, and commands. And you can tell that they themselves do not keep them, right? So I just wanted to bring that out when we talked about the ships of Tarshish. Okay, all right. So I hope you was able to keep all that together. So remember, the ships of Tarshish is a real people, a nation here. Right? Okay. The king had a fleet of trading ships of Tarshish that sailed with Hiram's fleet. Once every 3 years, the ships returned loaded with gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. So King Solomon became richer and wiser than any other king on the earth. People from every nation came to consult him and hear the wisdom Yahuah had given him. Year after year, everyone who visited brought him gifts of silver and gold, clothing, weapons, spices, horses, and mules. Babe, can you get her a set of headphones out of there, please?
What?
Off the table. There's probably some sitting on that computer. Solomon built up a huge force of chariots and horses. He had 1,400 chariots, 12,000 horses. He stationed some of them in the chariot cities and some near him in Jerusalem. The king made silver as plentiful in Jerusalem as stone, and valuable cedar timber was as common as the sycamore fig trees that grow in the foothills of Judah. Solomon's horses, thank you, babe. Solomon's horses were imported from Egypt and from Cilicia. The king's traders acquired them from Cilicia at the standard price. At that time, chariots from Egypt could be purchased for 600 pieces of silver and horses for 100 pieces of silver. They were then exported to the kings of the Hittites and the kings of Aram. All right.
I want to be here.
What'd you say?
I want to go home.
What are you talking about?
No, he said, I hate it here.
Oh. All right. 1 Kings chapter 11, y'all. Now, King Solomon loved many foreign women. Besides Pharaoh's daughter, he married women from Moab, Ammon, Edom, Sidon, and from among the Hittites. Yahuah had clearly instructed the people of Israel, you must not marry them because they will turn your hearts to their gods. Yet Solomon insisted on loving them anyway. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines. And in fact, they did turn his heart away from Yahuah. And we read about all of that when you read about that section of Solomon that we already read in the Legends of the Jews and all that trouble he got into, even being kicked out of his kingdom and treated as a madman and a beggar, right? Okay, y'all got to read that if y'all haven't. In Solomon's old age, they turned his heart to worship other gods instead of being completely faithful to Yahuah, his God, as his father David had been. Solomon worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. In this way, Solomon did what was evil in Yahuah's sight. He refused to follow Yahuah completely as his father David had done. On the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem, he even built a pagan shrine for Chemosh, the detestable god of Moab, and another for Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. Solomon built such shrines for all of his foreign wives to use for burning incense and sacrificing to their gods. Yahuah was very angry with Solomon, for his heart had turned away from Yahuah, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. He had warned Solomon specifically about worshiping other gods, but Solomon did not listen to Yahuah's command. So now Yahuah said to him, since you have not kept my covenant and have disobeyed my decrees, I will surely tear the kingdom away from you, and I will give it to one of your servants. But for the sake of your father David, I will not do this while you are still alive. I will take the kingdom away from your son. And even so, I will not take away the entire kingdom. I will let him be king of one tribe for the sake of my servant David and for the sake of Jerusalem, my chosen city. And we know that that one tribe that he left under the care of the kingdom of Judah was the tribe of Benjamin. Then Yahuah raised up Hadad the Edomite, a member of Edom's royal family, to be Solomon's adversary. Years before David had defeated Edom, Joab, his army commander, had stayed to bury some of the Israelite soldiers who had died in battle. While there, they killed every male in Edom. Joab and the army of Israel had stayed there for 6 months, killing them. But Hadad and a few of his father's royal officials escaped and headed for Egypt. Hadad was just a boy at the time. They set out from Midian and went to Paran, where others joined them. Then they traveled to Egypt and went to Pharaoh, who gave them a home, food, and some land. Pharaoh had grew very fond of Hadad, and he gave him his wife's sister in marriage, the sister of Queen Taphanes. She bore him a son, Genubath. Taphanes raised him in Pharaoh's palace among Pharaoh's own sons. When the news reached Hadad in Egypt that David and his commander Joab were both dead, he said to Pharaoh, "Let me return to my own country." "Why?" Pharaoh asked him. "What do you lack here that makes you want to go home?" "Nothing," he replied, "but even so, let me return home." Yahuah also raised up Rezon, son of Elida, as Solomon's adversary. Rezon had fled from his master, King Hadad-ezer of Zobah, and had become the leader of a gang of rebels. After David conquered Hadad-ezer, Rezon and his men fled to Damascus, where he became king. Rezon was Israel's bitter adversary for the rest of Solomon's reign, and he made trouble, just as Hadad did. Rezon hated Israel intensely and continued to reign in Aram. Another rebel leader was Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, one of Solomon's own officials. He came from the town of Zeradah in Ephraim, and his mother was Zeruiah, a widow. This is the story behind his rebellion. Solomon was rebuilding the supporting terraces and repairing the walls of the city of his father David. Jeroboam was a very capable young man, and when Solomon saw how industrious he was, he put him in charge of the labor force from the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, the descendants of Joseph. One day, as Jeroboam was leaving Jerusalem, the prophet Ahijah from Shiloh met him along the way. Ahijah was wearing a new cloak. The two of them were alone in the field, and Ahijah took hold of the new cloak he was wearing and tore it into 12 pieces. Then he said to Jeroboam, "Take 10 of these pieces, for this is what Yahuah, the God of Israel, says. I am about to tear the kingdom from the hand of Solomon, and I will give 10 tribes to you. But I will leave him one tribe for the sake of my servant David and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all of the tribes of Israel. For Solomon has abandoned me and worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, Chemosh, the god of Moab, and Molech, the god of the Ammonites. He has not followed my ways and done what is pleasing in my sight. He has not obeyed my decrees and regulations as David his father did. But I will not take the entire kingdom from Solomon at this time. For the sake of my servant David, the one whom I choose and who obeyed my commands and decrees, I will keep Solomon as leader for the rest of his life. But I will take the kingdom away from his son and give 10 of the tribes to you. His son will have one tribe so that the descendants of David, my servant, will continue to reign, shining like a lamp in Jerusalem, the city I have chosen to be the place for my name. And I will place you on the throne of Israel, and you will rule over all that your heart desires. If you listen to what I tell you and follow my ways and do what I consider to be right, and if you obey my decrees and commands as my servant David did, then I will always be with you. I will establish an enduring dynasty for you as I did for David, and I will give Israel to you. Because of Solomon's sin, I will punish the descendants of David, though not forever." Solomon tried to kill Jeroboam. Look, Yahuah just got done speaking to Jeroboam, King Solomon's servant, and he telling him that he gonna give him all of this, and he's gonna punish Solomon, although not forever. And so when Solomon found that out, he tried to kill Jeroboam. Solomon tried to kill Jeroboam, but he fled to King Shishak of Egypt and stayed there until Solomon died. Summary of Solomon's reign. The rest of the events in Solomon's reign, including all his deeds and his wisdom, are recorded in the book of the Acts of Solomon. All right, Meg, love you too. Drive safe. Okay. Solomon ruled in Jerusalem over all of Israel for 40 years. When he died, he was buried in the city of David, named for his father. Then his son Rehoboam became the next king. So now we're about to have this clash go on with Jeroboam, whom Yahuah spoke to and said, I'm going to give you this kingdom. I'm just going to give you 10 of the tribes. And he's also going to give the kingdom of Judah, along with just the one tribe of Benjamin, which is going to have some of Simeon in it. And a lot of the Levites from the 12 tribes is going to defect down here to Judah. So in the kingdom of Judah, there is Judah and Benjamin with a little bit of Simeon and a lot of the Levitical priests, a lot of the tribe of Levi. Okay. Then his son Rehoboam became the next king. All right, y'all, last chapter for today. 1 Kings chapter 12. The northern tribes revolt. Rehoboam went to Shechem, where all Israel had gathered to make him king. When Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, heard of this, he returned from Egypt, for he had fled to Egypt to escape from King Solomon. The leaders of Israel summoned him, and Jeroboam and the whole assembly of Israel went to speak with Jeroboam. Your father was a hard master, they said. Lighten the harsh labor demands and the heavy taxes that your father imposed on us, then we will be your loyal subjects. Rehoboam replied, give me 3 days to think this over, then come back for my answer. So the people went away. Then King Rehoboam discussed the matter with the older men who had counseled his father Solomon. What is your advice? He asked. How should I answer these people? The older counselors replied, if you are willing to be a servant to these people today and give them a favorable answer, they will always be your loyal subjects. But Rehoboam rejected the advice of the older men and instead asked the opinion of the young men who had grown up with him and were now his advisors. What's your advice? He asked them. How should I answer these people who want me to lighten the burdens imposed by my father? The young men replied, this is what you should tell those complainers who want a lighter burden. My little finger is thicker than my father's waist. Yes, my father laid heavy burdens on you, but I'm going to make them even heavier. My father beat you with whips, but I will beat you with scorpions. Bella, did you push that in? Push those headphones all the way in. Huh? Push the headphone. Let me see. I think this out a little bit. Is that in? Oh, you just got those up extremely loud. Turn that down some of your ears. Turn it down some. That's loud for you to have on headphones. Okay. All right. My father beat you with whips, but I will beat you with scorpions. 3 days later, Jeroboam and all the people returned to hear Rehoboam's decision, just as the king had ordered. But Rehoboam spoke harshly to the people, for he rejected the advice of the older counselors and followed the counselors of his younger advisors. He told the people, my father laid heavy burdens on you, but I'm going to make them even heavier. My father beat you with whips, but I will beat you with scorpions. So the king paid no attention to the people. This turn of events was the will of Yahuah, for it fulfilled Yahuah's message to Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, through the prophet Ahijah from Shiloh. Boy, they go to tell you, listening to dumb advice from your peers. I ain't saying all your peers are dumb, but some of them just might be, right? They done just got the entire kingdom stripped for you. Although Yahuah willed it, right? It's just playing out the sequence of events that had to happen for the prophecy to come true. But sheesh, you could have possibly pleaded with Yah for that not to happen on your watch. But whew. When all of Israel realized that the king had refused to listen to them, they responded, down with the dynasty of David. We have no interest in the son of Jesse. Back to your homes, O Israel. Look out for your own house, O David. So the people of Israel returned home, but Rehoboam continued to rule over the Israelites who lived in the towns of Judah. King Rehoboam sent Adoniram, who was in charge of forced labor, to restore order, but the people of Israel stoned him to death. When this news reached King Rehoboam, he quickly jumped into his chariot and fled to Jerusalem. And to this day, the northern tribes of Israel have refused to be ruled by a descendant of David. When the people of Israel learned of Jeroboam's return from Egypt, they called an assembly and made him king over all of Israel. So only the tribe of Judah remained loyal to the family of David. I see. Shemaiah's prophecy. When Rehoboam arrived at Jerusalem, he mobilized the men of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, 180,000 select troops to fight against the men of Israel and to restore the kingdom to himself. But Yahuah said to Shemaiah, the man of Yahuah, say to Rehoboam, son of Solomon, king of Judah, and to all the people of Judah and Benjamin and to the rest of the people, this is what Yahuah says, do not fight against your relatives, the Israelites. Go back home. For what has happened is my doing. So they obeyed the message of Yahuah and went home as Yahuah had commanded. Jeroboam then built the city of Shechem and all the hill country of Ephraim, and it became his capital. Later, he went and built up the town of Peniel. Jeroboam thought to himself, unless I am careful, the kingdom will return to the dynasty of David. When these people go to Jerusalem to offer sacrifices at the temple of Yahuah, they will again give their allegiance to King Rehoboam of Judah. Then they will kill me and make him their king instead. So on the advice of his counselors, the king made 2 gold calves. He said to the people, it is too much trouble for you to worship in Jerusalem. Look, Israel, these are the gods who brought you out of Egypt. He placed these calf idols in Bethel and in Dan at either end of his kingdom. But this became a great sin, for the people worshiped the idols, traveling as far north as Dan to worship the one there. Jeroboam also erected buildings at the pagan shrines and ordained priests from the common people, those who were not from the priestly tribe of Levi. And Jeroboam instituted a religious festival in Bethel, held on the 15th day of the 8th month, in imitation of the annual festival of shelters in Judah, which we know is held on the 15th day in the 7th month, right? There at Bethel, he himself offered sacrifices to the calves he had made, and he appointed priests for the pagan shrines he had made. So on the 15th day of the 8th month, a day he designated himself, Jeroboam offered sacrifices on an altar at Bethel. He instituted a religious festival for Israel, and he went up to the altar to burn incense. Whew. And that's about to go from bad to worse, y'all. And this is where we about to see king after king thrown off the throne, where you were giving everybody a chance. Like, nope, you ain't get it right. Out of here. Nope. You want a chance? Let's go. Let's see what you do. You gonna turn them back to me? Nope. You got to go to kill him, please. All right. Next up in line. Who next? And then we're gonna see that over the next few days while we're going through Kings and Chronicles, all the wicked kings of Israel, the split portion of the family with the 10 tribes. They just gonna run through them. Right? Yahuah said, is there not one righteous king left out of these 10 tribes? Let's go. We're going to give everybody a chance, though, so y'all won't say that I'm a bad daddy, right? Okay, y'all. Trina said, I went to the doctor to get a mammy, honey, and they had a tree decorated with Easter stuff. I wanted to knock that tree over. I was mad inside. I bet you was. Look, now I'm just like, when I go and I see it now, let me tell you, when I first started, okay, so as I first started keeping the commands and as I was realizing this stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, we just doing everything Yahuah told us not to do, right? And when you actually begin to keep it, not just out of being religious or whatever, because we ain't offering sacrifices, we ain't killing animals, but like he said, it's a memorial feast, just kind of walk you through the motions of what he did for his people so you can experience just a little bit of the goodness and what he said, right? But what it does is it actually begins to open your eyes to a bunch of pagan revelry. Not do this pagan, because a lot of people use the word pagan, and some people get offended by the word pagan because they worship and this is where they found the Lord. Okay, I get all that, right? So, like I said, I become a little bit more compassionate with people, not compassionate with sin, but I understand because I used to be that person, right? So I ain't gonna, I know how much it took for y'all to, hey girl, hey, listen, pay attention. I'm like, what? Huh? What? Oh, like wake up, slapping me. I'm like, okay, what? Oh my gosh. So it was an eye-opening, shooketh my soul. What are we doing? Right? And so instead of coming down on people, it causes me to cry out to Yahuah for forgiveness, cry out to Yahuah for forgiveness for them. Remember how when Jonah went to Nineveh, and we ain't gonna get into all that, but I specifically want to talk about what Yahuah said in relation to the people of Nineveh who were worshiping multiple gods, right? To whereas we thinking, go ahead, preacher, let them blow them up, but Yahuah wanted to give his forgiveness to Nineveh, right? He said, shouldn't I not have mercy on all these countless souls who don't know their right hand from their left? Right. So when I see people, they're still steeped in tradition and pagan revelry and Christmas and stuff, I'm reminded of what Yahuah said to Jonah. Should I not have mercy on them? People, countless souls who don't know their right hand from their left, that don't know that they have been fooled, that don't know that they're truly not worshiping me, like they're mixing worship. They don't know that I don't accept that because they weren't taught that. Should I not have mercy on them? Would you not want Yahuah to have mercy on you in your ignorance? Right. So I come from a whole nother mindset in my recent days and how I look at people in their ignorance. Yeah, you might be a little ignorant. You might be a lot ignorant, right? But I understand that Yahuah desires, he doesn't desire to destroy the wicked, right? He desires that the wicked are, for one, given the truth, and so they can understand, so that they can make a decision whether they want to begin to lining up and serving and giving praise to the only creator, the creator of heaven and earth, right? He wants everybody to be able to come to that decision without force, without beating them across the head. They have to wake up and see and choose, because when you choose, he wants you to choose him because you see that there is no one better besides him, right? He wants you to make that decision. He doesn't want people beating you over the head. He simply wants us to lay out the truth before them and let them choose, just like he did. He said, look, I've laid out life and death before you. You choose. He said, but let me help you out if you really don't know. Choose life, because blessings come with this, and this comes with this. He said, these are laws and principles that I've already set in motion, and they're just going to go, right? He said, I don't have to do anything else, but depending on which route you take will lead you to a certain end, right? He said, this path is the path. Walk in this path. This is the way. Walk in it, right? He laid it out and he gave us the answers to the test, and it's our choice. It's our choice, right? So I strive to give the truth, to lay out the truth, to make it clear and plain so you can see, right? With not all these tricks and acts of persuasion and Jedi mind tricks. We want to uncover the truth, show you all the lies so you can see everything laid out bare. Just like he told Habakkuk, write it out, make it plain, right? And when it's made plain, people can make clear, level-headed decisions on which way they want to go, right? Our job is to remove as much garbage and as many weeds that is impeding your way, that's impeding your sight, so you can see, right? And you can choose, right? And if it still look a little, I don't know, now you need to fall back on the principles that Yahuah has taught us. Okay, well, what did Yahuah say about this? He may not have given this specific thing, but there is a principle where this will fall under by default. What principle is that? Okay, Father, I need some help, right? And if we learn how to do that, we'll find ourselves progressing and not regressing in life, right? That's it. Okay, so we're gonna pick up on page 481. Nebuchadnezzar, a beast. Trina said, I completely understand. That's why I don't say nothing. I only speak out when someone asks me something, like a man asked me yesterday, why don't I eat meat? He heard me ordering my food for lunch. I explained it to him. We talked his whole lunchtime. He was proud military. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I do the same thing. I ain't going to offer you information unless you ask me. Now, when you ask me, you done set up the channel because you coming to me. I ain't trying to beat you over the head. You notice something about me and you're curious. So I prepare myself for times when people get curious enough to ask me. It gives me an open door. May I speak freely? Right? Oh, those are wonderful things, right? When you begin to do this, you ain't got to go running after people. You really don't. You ain't got to go banging on their doors like some of the stuff. I'm not saying that, or whatever. Okay, that whatever. But I'm saying you ain't got to go out here chasing after people and trying to pull them in and saving their souls. Not saying that you shouldn't, but what will happen is when you line yourself up with Yahuwah's word, what you will see begin to happen is people will be drawn to you, right? You ain't got to go after them. They will be drawn to you. Those that are searching will be drawn to you, and they will come to you. They are going to come to what they perceive as being light, and they're going to find out if this is a true light or is this an artificial light, right? But they're going to come, right? You ain't got to go after them. They're going to come after you. Nebuchadnezzar, a beast. Nebuchadnezzar, the ruler of the whole world, to whom even the wild animals paid obedience. His pet was a lion with a snake coiled about its neck, did not escape punishment for his sins. Let me read that again. Nebuchadnezzar, the ruler of the whole world, to whom even the wild animals paid obedience. His pet animal was a lion with a snake coiled about its neck, did not escape punishment for his sins. Okay, it just gave you some extra information in between the sentence. So the sentence was Nebuchadnezzar did not escape punishment for his sins, right? And the stuff in between is just letting you know he was the ruler of the world. The animals paid obedience to him. He had a pet lion that had a snake wrapped around his neck. So even a man like this with all this type of stuff going on with him, he the boss, even he didn't escape punishment for his sins. I'll read it one more time. That was good. Nebuchadnezzar, the ruler of the whole world, to whom even the wild animals paid obedience. His pet was a lion with a snake coiled about his neck, did not escape punishment for his sins. He was chastised as none before him. He whom the fear of Yahuwah had first held back from a war against Jerusalem, and who had to be dragged forcibly as he sat on his horse to the Holy of Holies by the archangel Michael. He later became so arrogant that he thought himself a god and cherished the plan of enveloping himself in a cloud so that he might live apart from men. Oh, he right bold, ain't he? He want to encircle himself with clouds. Oh, okay, Nebuchadnezzar. A heavenly voice resounded, O thou wicked man, son of a wicked man, and descendant of Nimrod the wicked, who incited the world to rebel against Yahuwah. Behold, the days of the years of a man are 80 years and 10, or perhaps by reason of strength 80 years. And remember, we talked about this in the first reading, Shucks, in 2018. Well, score is 20 years. It could have been a second reading. Could have been early on second reading. But a score is 20 years, right? So 20, 40, 60, plus 10, 70. By reason of strength, you live 80, right? Did I do that right? No, I did it wrong. 60, 10 and 70, but by reason of strength, you took care of your body, then 80, right? 20, 40, 60, 80, that's 80 years old, right? Behold, the days of man are 80 years and 10, or 70 years. 80, 60 plus 10, that's 70, or perhaps by reason of strength, 80 years. A score is 20, 20, 40, 60, 80. By reason of strength, you take care of your body, you're strong, you possibly live to 80. We know that people got more strength as the day is going because they're living past 80. Some looking real good at 80, looking like they half that age. It takes 500 years to traverse the distance of earth from the first heaven, and as long a time to penetrate from the bottom to the top of the first heaven, and not less are the distance from one of the 7 heavens to the next. How then canst thou speak of ascending like unto the Most High above the heights of the clouds? He said, okay, so by reason of strength, if you live to be 80, you wouldn't even be able to send a quarter of the way, because it takes 500 years to transverse. If you were walking in your time, in your dimension, it will take you 500 years to traverse from earth to heaven. Read it again. I'll go back up. O thou wicked man, son of a wicked man, and a descendant of Nimrod the wicked, who incited the world to rebel against Yahuwah. Behold, the days of the years of a man are 80 years and 10, or perhaps by reason of strength 80 years. It takes 500 years to traverse the distance of the earth from the first heaven, and as long a time to penetrate from the bottom to the top of the first heaven, and not less are the distances from one of the seven heavens to the next. How then canst thou speak of ascending like unto the Most High above the heights of the clouds? For this transgression of deeming himself more than a man, he was punished by being made to live for some time as a beast among beasts, treated by them as though he were one of them. For 40 days he led this life. As far down as his navel, he had the appearance of an ox, and the lower part of his body resembled that of a lion. Like an ox, he ate grass, and like a lion, he attacked a curious crowd. But Daniel spent his time in prayer, entreating that the 7 years of this brutish life allotted to Nebuchadnezzar might be reduced to 7 months. His prayer was granted. At the end of 40 days, reason returned to the king. The next 40 days he passed in weeping bitterly over his sins. And in the interval that remained to complete the 7 months, he again lived the life of a beast. Hiram, the king of Tyre, was a contemporary of Nebuchadnezzar, and in many respects resembled him. He too esteemed himself a god and sought to make men believe in his divinity by the artificial heavens he fashioned for himself. In the sea he erected 4 iron pillars on which he built up 7 heavens, each 500 ells higher than the one below. The first was a plate of glass of 500 square ells, and the second a plate of iron of 1,000 square ells. The third of lead, and separated from the second by canals, contained huge round boulders which produced the sound of thunder on the iron. The fourth heaven was of brass, the fifth of copper, the sixth of silver, and the seventh of gold, all separated from each other by canals. In the seventh, 3,500 ells in extent, he had diamonds and pearls, which he manipulated so as to produce the effect of flashes and sheets of lightning, while the stones below imitated the growling of the thunder. So let me share something with y'all if y'all didn't quite know this, because I've seen people doing this teaching, and even one recently, somebody going in here that does not have intimate knowledge about the Old Testament. People who proclaim that they've been doing this for over 20 years are completely ignorant of what's back here, and they're not intimate with the scriptures. They cherry pick and choose what they want and create their own lessons around it, and multiple people are being led astray by it. And it makes me sick to my stomach, and I weep for those who are being taken by this, who have no knowledge of these scriptures and other things that were not canonized in here, right? So in the scripture, and I want to say it was Isaiah, where it talks about, "O King." Matter of fact, here's what some translations saying. You're gonna know exactly what I'm talking about. "O thou Lucifer, son of the morning, who has fallen from heaven." Right? I just kind of summed that up for you, but y'all know what I'm talking about. That particular scripture right there, it is not talking about Satan, right? As the church teaches, and a lot of people like to teach, that is not talking about Satan. Matter of fact, if you just read a little bit and you read the couple preceding chapters and the chapters that come after it, it clearly tells you it is talking about the king of Tyre, which we're reading about here, who's giving you descriptions of what he did. He to himself exalted himself to be a god, just like King Nebuchadnezzar did, right? And it even tells you how far he went as to even building things that will fool the people into thinking he was divine, and he was not. Lucifer was added in there. It was not talking about Satan, the fallen angels. This was talking about a human rogue vagabond king, the king of Tyre. Oh, Lucifer, son of the morning. That's who it's talking about, the king of Tyre. So just in case you didn't know, you can go behind me and check and double check that. You will see that in the original scrolls, Lucifer was not, that was added, right? Like I said, Old Testament been tampered with just like the New, but you have to do your due diligence to make sure you're not taken away with improper teachings, right? And people trying to cherry pick stuff and make you believe some point that they're trying to push that's a bunch of garbage, right? Let me go back up. Hiram, king of Tyre, was a contemporary of Nebuchadnezzar, and in many respects resembled him. He too esteemed himself as a god, and sought to make men believe in his divinity by the artificial heavens he fashioned for himself. In the sea, he erected 4 iron pillars on which he built up 7 heavens, each 500 ells larger than the one below. The first was a plate of glass of 500 square ells, and the second a plate of iron of 1,000 square ells. The third of lead, and separated from the second by canals, contained huge round boulders which produced the sound of thunder on iron. The fourth heaven was of brass, the fifth of copper, the sixth of silver, and the seventh of gold, all separated from each by other canals. In the seventh, 3,500 ells in extent, he had diamonds and pearls, which he manipulated so as to produce the effects of flashes and sheets of lightning, while the stones below imitated the growling of thunder. As Hiram was thus floating above the earth, in his vain imagination, deeming himself superior to the rest of men, he suddenly perceived the prophet Ezekiel next to himself. He had been waved thither by a wind. Frightened and amazed, Hiram asked the prophet how he had risen to his heights. The answer was, Yahuah brought me here, you old wicked king. And all these contraptions you got set up to fool men. The answer was, Yahuah brought me here, and he bade me to ask thee, why thou art so proud, thou born of a woman? Boom. The king of Tyre replied defiantly, I am not born of a woman. I live forever. And as God resides on the sea, so my abode is on the sea. And as he inhabits 7 heavens, so do I. See how many kings I have survived? 21 of the house of David, and as many kings of the kings, and as many kings of the kingdom of the 10 tribes, with no less than 50 prophets and 10 high priests have I buried. Thereupon Yahuah said, I will destroy thy house, that henceforth, Thereupon Yahuah said, I will destroy my house, that henceforth Hiram may have no reason for self-glorification, because all his pride comes only from the circumstance that he furnished the cedar trees for building the temple. Matter of fact, we read about the cedar trees today in 1 Kings that he gave to King Solomon. Oh, that makes something make sense. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Yo, remember when we read, I think we read it yesterday. Hiram, when King Solomon, when he had got done building the different cities and stuff, he gave some cities to Hiram, right? And what King Solomon had built was immaculate, right? This makes sense now. Because Hiram thought himself to also be a god, and he had exalted himself. He looked at the cities that King Solomon had given to him. He said, like, what are these? Like, what are those? These are the cities you bestow upon your God. That makes 100% complete sense right now. Hold on. Look. Thereupon Yahuah said, I will destroy my house, that henceforth Hiram may have no reason for self-glorification, because all his pride comes only from the circumstance that he furnished the cedar trees for the building of the temple. The end of this proud king was that he was conquered by Nebuchadnezzar, deprived of this throne, and made to suffer a cruel death. Though the Babylonian king was the stepson of Hiram, he had no mercy with him. Daily he cut off a bit of the flesh of his body and forced the Tyrian king to eat it until he finally perished. Oh, we're going to let you know, O king, that you are not a god. And just so you know you're not a god, we're going to carve pieces of your flesh off to you so you can taste and see that you are born of a woman. Blah. Daily he cut off a bit of the flesh of his body and forced the Tyrian king to eat it until he finally perished. Hiram's palace was swallowed by the earth, and it should have been. Hiram's palace was swallowed by the earth, and in the bowels of the earth it will remain until it shall emerge in the future world as the habitation of the pious. What time we at? Oh, we got to stop here today, y'all. All right, so we're going to stop right here, and we're going to read about the false prophets tomorrow, y'all. Okay. Let's see the date. Okay. Okay, y'all. So that was shucks. We only read a paragraph today, probably because we took so long and I added in some stuff today. So we just did page 481 today, Legends of the Jews, but we read 1 Kings 10, 11, and 12. All right, beautiful people. We'll pick this back up tomorrow. All right, so it is Wednesday, April the 14th, 2021, day 127 of year 3 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets. And of the 3-year consecutive day count, day 796. Remember, that is without the Sabbath days or the feast day Sabbath days added into the count. Why? Because we rest, right? Take a day off. We rest, right? Okay. So, and like I said, we read 1 Kings 10, 11, and 12, and that one little section about Nebuchadnezzar and Hiram, the tyrant king who called himself a god. Oh, I ascend above the heavens. Yo, that makes sense, right? Y'all, if they have canonized this portion about Hiram, the king of Tyre, in there, no one would have ever got that part all chopped and screwed, said, oh, Lucifer, thou son of the morning star. What mistranslations will get you off every time. He even built heavens, mimicking to fool the people of the divinity, and was using magic to float. Oh, I float, I ascend above the heavens. No, my G, you born of a woman. Taste your own flesh. Ooh, blessed be the most holy for truth, right? Oh, is this your king? Is this your king? You are no king at all. All right, y'all. So let's go to the blessing, which is found in Numbers chapter 6. Oh, that's going to be our title today. Is this your king? Numbers chapter 6, verses 22 through 27. Remember, the first 21 verses is a Nazirite vow. Man or woman can take the Nazirite vow. And Yahuah spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto Aaron and unto his son, saying, on this wise ye shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them, may Yahuah bless us and keep us. May Yahuah make his face to shine upon us and be gracious unto us. May Yahuah lift up his countenance upon us and give us his peace. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. Okay, beautiful people, double check for questions real quick. No people got to go to work. No questions in either place. All right, y'all. That's it. Thank y'all for hanging out with me today while I stay on my post and read the words of the Most Holy, just like they did back in the day. That's what they did. They just took the words. That's what matter of fact, that's what Yahuah commanded us to do. He said, take these words and read them aloud before the people. But blessed be the Most Holy. Everybody got their own personal copies where they can read them aloud to themselves and they can read it themselves. Some people still don't have it, but blessed be the Most Holy for social media, for those that possibly may not have one, and they can hear somebody reading his words just like he commanded. Because all you got to do is read it, let them hear, and be convicted, right? Or be changed. You can do with it whatever you want to do it with, simply to read it. And as I read it, I just share some personal stories of how things began to open up and they shine before my face, and how scripture was enlightened to me, and seeing it being relevant in my day, right? All right. It becomes more personable when you learn the story about the family, right? It becomes so good. You really become intimate with the details, just like you're intimate with the details of your own family, the cousins. You got that one cousin that's always, and you got this one uncle, and it's the same thing. We can see the principles happening in our own individual families. So that's how intimate we should become with the details of the Old Testament. I hate calling it that because it's a misnomer. It's not even named appropriate. It's named like it doesn't matter. And it clearly matters because we're still living out the principles. Even to this day, even if you say we're not, you're ignorant that you are. Matter of fact, because you're in captivity because you didn't know, your ancestors did not realize that these are living words from end to end. They will never pass away, right? The words of Yahuah are forever living. They should be forever living with inside of us, deep down in our shanana or in our spirit, right? That's what shanana is. I hear me use that because it's just fun to say, but I mean spirit, right? But I know some people, they can't handle ebonics and stuff like that. It's too much for them and they have no sense of humor. So, but I like saying shanana because it's fun to say. But anyway, y'all, I'll see y'all tomorrow. 7:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Remember the Sabbath shift. So now it is shifted to Monday because the new moon was spotted on Monday based on the new moon report sightings that I have seen. Although I couldn't see it here because it was extremely cloudy, it has been reported that it was seen on Monday. All right, y'all. That's it. I'm out of here. Love y'all. Peace.